Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of Not Your Average Man. This is the second and final part of our two-part episode with our special guest, Chad Byers, joining the roundtable. Brad, Chad, and I started our talk about how we can live a life with no regrets. If you hadn't heard part one, make sure you go back and check it out. Also, make sure you subscribe and like the show. This is the way we get the word out about the show, so all the likes and comments are greatly appreciated. We want to hear about topics you're interested in, so you can also email us at email@notyouraverageman.com, or you could hit us up in the YouTube community section of the show. As part of last week's episode, we began to break down a top 10 list of regrets that secular men had reported having on their lives. We knocked out number 10, and on this week's discussion, we pick up with number 9 as we continue to work our way through the list and more. All right, number 9, not staying in touch with friends. I can see this one. I'll go first. I'm not that good at it. And I will every now and then think about like, hey, I got some buddies, really close friends that I haven't been in touch with, probably haven't spoken to them for a few years. And they don't live that far away. They live 4 hours away, but still I'm not even talking to them. Not really. I'm not on Facebook, so I'm not seeing them really on Facebook. But still, I don't make the effort. So I guess maybe it's not a regret. Maybe it's an occasional regret. But if you're one of my close friends that I'm talking to, then I've been thinking about you and reach out because you still are important to me, even though my actions don't show that.
I've got to go ahead, Brad. You can go first.
Oh, no. Sure you got something better. I am not super sentimental. And so shocker, right?
I'm not either, so I'm not sure.
but I do have, I have friends from high school. I haven't talked to them for years. And then a lot of my more recent friends that I haven't kept in touch with. It's funny. I just got a text the other day and my buddy was like, dude, I am so sorry. I haven't reached out to you, like all these things. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And I replied back, like we were texting back and forth. I told him, I'm like, no, man, same here. Like, don't feel bad, that we haven't really lost touch. We just haven't been in contact as much as usual. So, I could see, depending on what stage of life you're in, I'm telling you, once I left college and got married and started a career, I just kind of see you guys, love every one of you, but I'm sure we'll cross paths again. But I was never constant. And I know Facebook has changed a lot of that because it's I haven't seen you in years and more your Facebook friends, right?
Yeah. Kind of in a similar way. I'm not hugely sentimental, but I've got probably four or five, 6 really close friends that I keep up with, and everybody else is kind of out on the periphery. And I think most people who have healthy, balanced lives, that's probably where they're at as far as friend groups and things like that. And when we talk about regrets, you can't be regretful for other people's actions because you may be one of those people that you're as intentional as possible and it's not reciprocated. Because I think that's probably a good bit of people as well saying I wish I spent more time with my friends. Maybe they put forth the effort and their friends didn't reciprocate that. Mm-hmm. That's not something that is their fault and that they need to feel guilty of. That's one of those things where I don't think that's wrong either to, if somebody doesn't reciprocate that, you've put yourself out there multiple times to, I'm not saying you cut them off, but you kind of cut them off because you also have to have boundaries and being able to keep your emotions regulated of I really desire this friendship and this relationship with this person as a friend, but I'm not going to get it. And so I need to stop spending emotional capital to get something back from that. That's a reality too.
Yeah. You're giving them level 7 and they're only level 2.
Particularly because demographically, I think that you have a lot more leeway when you're younger. I would say college age to right after young adult. But once you start getting into, I've got children, I'm in my 30s, I'm in my 40s, you're kind of doing your family a disservice if you're constantly trying to go out with the boys. That's great and you need that, but that does not take precedence the way that it used to.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking when you get older, I feel, at least for me, and this might not be for everybody, but I feel that my circle has shrunk. Like the older I get, my primary focus is my family. Like, I mean, that will trump going out. I've gone on hunting trips with guys that I'm close friends with and all these things, like, but ultimately what trumps everything is being home. Like my kids will be out of the house before I know it. I don't even want to think about it. And so I'm like, man, this is where I need to invest in right now, but for sure in my personal life, my friend circles have shrunk since as I've gotten older, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and I like to joke about the less spoken of miracle of Jesus, a man in his 30s who had 12 really close friends. But but so it is something that as men we tend to struggle with having friends and having close friends. So it is a balance. We should definitely have a few really close friends. We should be selective of those ones whom we can, and Brad, you talked about this in prior episodes, right? Somebody that you have alongside of you, somebody that you that you have maybe in front of you, someone who's kind of behind you that you can be mentoring or discipling, right? So the people that you are feeding into your life, that you're feeding into their life, and that are holding you accountable, right? And can build each other up and walk shoulder to shoulder with. Very important. But our primary ministry, right, starts in the house. If you're married, it's your family's primary ministry. In fact, your marriage is the priority. God's the priority. Then your marriage out of the family is the priority. Kids, and then we start to go out from there. Important to have friends. Important to be in touch with them. I'm assuming that maybe this idea of staying in touch with friends is people regretted because that they let certain friends go and that they didn't make the efforts when they could have and all that. But yeah, certainly you don't want to regret being out running around with your friends and missing your kids and not being that example for them.
Yeah.
All right. So let's look at number 8. Number 8 is not getting into a fight. So I guess the idea was, though, it was believed to be necessary for building confidence. So
what episode was it that I was like, what's wrong with a lot of people today? They've never been punched in the face. I mean, take that with a grain of salt, for sure.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, exactly. Is it down here? Like and subscribe somewhere.
Is it this side or this side?
Yeah. No, I get the confidence side of it. I understand where that's coming from. I would count it. I mean, man, I would count it a blessing if you never have to be in a fight, honestly. Right. I mean, no joking aside, I think that's good. I don't think it's a rite of passage. Like, oh, you've never been in a fight. You're not a man, or you've never experienced that. How can I just, especially now in this day and age, like, God bless, you start a fight with someone, next thing you know, they're like running to their car to grab a gun and they're going to end everything right now. And it's not like my dad.
And but you don't have to worry about their buddies. All their buddies are just recording you with their phones.
Yeah, they just got their phones up recording so they can get it on social media, right? No,
they're going to jump in.
I remember him.
Nope.
No, they won't. I remember him telling me stories like in high school, because he was trying to tell me when I was in high school, like, hey, I wasn't running around with a rough crowd by any means, but he was like, be careful. You don't want to have to fight if you don't have to. This is not something you want to do. And then he was explaining when he went to high school, they get a fight and the next day they're like best friends. It wasn't a big deal. I mean, I didn't go to like the best high school. I didn't go to the worst high school, but I saw some like fights. Nobody was friends after it was over. And there was multiple people jumping in and it wasn't a good place to be in. In the past episodes, when I was talking about like what's wrong with a lot of people today is they've never been punched in the face. My wife laughs at me when I say that too. The thought process behind it is like that keyboard warrior type of environment where it's like, man, there's consequences to things you say. You can't just blurt things out like whatever you feel and just kind of like poke the bear, because sometimes a bear is going to punch back, And so these people, and this is just generally speaking, they get online and they say whatever they want. And then they think they could do that when they go out somewhere or how they act. I mean, I get thrown into odd situations all the time because that's just my line of work. And you see the way people act and you're like, man, and that comes in my head. It's like, hey, if that dude had ever been punched in the face, he wouldn't even be acting like that right now. And vice versa. There are dudes that have been punched in the face multiple times that act crazy. Like, yes, it's like both ways. Yeah. But I would definitely count it a blessing if you don't ever have to get in a fight.
Yeah. I mean, we got to be big enough men to be able to walk away from a fight. I'm guessing these guys are saying Absolutely. It's because they haven't been tested, or maybe they regret because they stepped down from a fight, backed away from a fight that maybe they shouldn't have backed away from. And I'm not saying getting into a fight, but maybe they backed away from a bully where if they stood up would have been enough. Yeah. But certainly, guys, you know what? It takes more of a man to be able to walk away when the other people are flapping than it does to swing. But if you're going to fight for the right cause, you know, fight for that. I had a buddy in high school and college, speaking of buddies, regret, and I'm going to call him out. His name was Eric. I'm not going to say his last name. So, but he would be a flapper. He would be a flapper. And then one night we were out and then he went off by himself and then he came back. He had a black eye. and we all, and none of us were like, oh, where are those dudes? We'll get them. All of us were just like, you probably deserved it. It's been a long time coming.
Long time coming. No surprise.
We're not shocked. In fact, that we probably need to shake his hand.
Or like for that to be a regret, if that's something you're feeling, you can go sign up for boxing lessons. You can go sign up go to your, I mean, I love watching my kids do jujitsu. It's the coolest thing ever. But that is like a little fight. Yeah, they're not smacking each other, but they're like doing these holds and flipping dudes around and all that. And it's fun to see. It's fun to watch. But yeah, I mean, if you really are like, I regret never getting a fight, go down to your local boxing gym, sign up and step in the ring if that's what you want.
If you feel that's necessary.
Yeah.
But it's the bigger man's being able to turn the other cheek, right?
And my stance is we espouse nonviolence in all situations. So
yeah. Yes. So here's a fun story. So I wasn't in the fight, but when I was first dating Jamie, I don't know, it was like the fourth date maybe. So I was standing or she went someplace. Somebody came up to me and says, "Dude, your girlfriend's in a fight." And I'm like, what? And then so that we cut through the kitchen to the back door. I'm outside, and Jamie is just swinging on this dude. She's just haymaker. and I stepped out, and it looked like he was thinking of swinging back. But then I walked to the door, and then he decided, no, I'll walk away instead because he would hit his date or his girlfriend. And Jamie's like, nope, not happening. So not saying this is good, right? You know, but we also should never put up with violence towards women. Right? Guys, men, we should never be bystanders. Not saying get into a fight, not saying that you got to jump anybody or anything, but you should never be a bystander to violence towards women. All right, that PSA was brought to you by, okay. So let's talk about number 7, not splurging on an expensive car. Go.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll regret that.
I could understand the premise behind that, but.
Yeah. Yeah, I can too, but
I guess, I don't know. You know, before I was saved.
Like, yeah, I
wanted a Suburban before I was saved, or not a Suburban. What was it? The big. It was a big car, one of the big SUVs, the Hummer. I wanted a Hummer before I was saved, and then afterwards, I'm like, no, a Hummer. And then afterwards, after I got saved, I'm like, no, I'm okay. I thought I wanted it, but I don't.
The people I run into that have cars. This is my stance on cars. Like, I would have liked to have a nice car before now. But I also really like being a landowner more. So,
oh yeah, that's 100%.
And when cars cost almost as much as owning land, then you know.
Well, it's one of those things where like Yeah, I get that. And I think, well, let's peel back the layers on that. I feel like a lot of that regret comes from the fact that their significant others or their wives won't let them have what they want.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
I think I think a lot of that may be less about the car and more about feeling like they're controlled.
Yeah.
Because you ask, what's stopping you from going out and getting the nice car? Is it finances? Okay, that makes sense. Is it some other thing? Let's walk through that. Is it your spouse or your significant other? Okay, well, why do they feel that way? Because I would say for most people, unless there's a relational conflict that would come from that, what is stopping them? Because I would say most people, if they wanted to go get a car, have the means to do it. Now, I'm not saying that to everybody, so I'm not making assumptions about anyone, but the people taking that survey, what's stopping you?
Yeah, or financed if they right.
And that's the point. That's the point I'm making. Is like anybody who, if that's what they really wanted, if that was a regret, you could go get a big stinky loan and get the car or the truck that you want.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
That's
I like that. I like that. Yeah, that point, that approach. Number 6, getting married too soon.
No such thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
have you ever been around toddlers?
Yeah. Dude, being 52 and being around younger kids and stuff like that, and then knowing that some of my friends who are not too much younger than me have kids that age, I'm thinking, I don't know how you do it. The ground hurts at this age.
One thing that, and this is terrible, but I totally should. This is one thing that makes me feel like I won the lottery is when I go to a playground and I see a dad that I know is at least 5 years or older than me, and he's got a kid the same age. That's the best feeling in the world. Nothing will make you feel like, yep, I got it figured out.
Or your wife's teacher in 9th grade has a kid who's in school with your kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
no.
I
was just saying that's a true story. He's Alicia's 9th grade teacher. Her kid and Chad and Alicia's kid are in the same class. Go ahead, Brad.
That's funny. No, I just think like you take that question and really what does it mean? It's kind of like the truck question, right? Like what did you all of a sudden you don't have any more options? Is that what it is? Like, oh, I married her. So I married too soon. And so now I can't like, oh, look at that over there. That's better, quote unquote, right? Like that's better over there, or that's better over there. Like I really, like, I don't like that regret at all. Like there is so much behind it. I mean, when you got married, were you not financially in or whatever, or stable or secure? Guess what? I wasn't. Lisa wasn't. Like we were scrounging around for like $1 to go to McDonald's to have a date, like that wasn't what it was about at all, and it's so that like, I don't understand,
Well, there are very few things in life that you can wait on it to be the right timing. And that's one of them you can't. Like there is, you're never going to be too prepared.
No.
Being a counselor, doing premarital counseling and stuff like that. The only thing I could say is that maybe they did do some preparation as far as learning, like doing premarital counseling and then learning more about each other and expectations. So that way, once they got married, they're like, we weren't prepared. But if they're talking about married too young or not waiting long enough to get married or something like that, I don't. Yeah. I don't
so
get that.
Like your answer, that's actually, I can see that. I go immediately to what's your problem? Like, are you thinking that it's the whole adage of like, did you marry the one? Right? Ooh. Like that's the one that God had for you. Like since birth, that's the one. Great if that's happened, but Like, come on. The one messed up somewhere down the line and it messed all the ones up. Like, there's no, like, yes, I do believe God brings people into your life, but I've had this conversation with men before where they're dating someone. They're like, well, I just don't feel like she's the one. And I'm like, well, then why are you dating her? Right? Like, why are you dating them? Then move on.
I've heard too.
If that's not the one.
Yeah, I've heard too many stories of arranged marriages that worked out well to really believe that the myth that the one exists.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Oh, I messed up God's plans. Which, the way you mess up God's plan is if you're a believer and you marry an unbeliever and you're unequally yoked. Okay, and I don't even then, I don't know if you can mess up God's plans, right?
When I was in college and I was thinking about relationships and I wasn't, I had broken up with my first and only longtime girlfriend. And then I was like, asking somebody for advice and they told me, they were like, if it's meant to be, you can't mess it up. And I was just like, oh, wow. That's really smart. And it's like, but yeah, that's the, God's going to do what he's going to do regardless. Yeah. And, as long as your relationships are probably where you establish a lot of those regrets, but at the same time, like if this is heading where it's supposed to be, who am I to think that I can screw it up?
Yeah.
Yeah. True.
That doesn't give me a leeway to try and screw it up, but.
Oh, no. Of course not.
Because that's also possible.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't know. It would be interesting to get like the behind the answer, right? Like, well, why? Mm-hmm. Expound on why do you feel you married too young or too soon? It didn't even say. It wasn't too young, right? It was too soon.
Just too soon
or something. Too soon, yeah. So what was it that I don't know? Did you have a wedding in the wintertime? It should have been in the summer. Like, is that
Didn't have enough money for a honeymoon? Well, save up now. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Go now.
All right. Let's move to number 5. Number 5 is not sleeping with all willing parties.
All right. Moving on to number 4. No. Does that go along with the married too soon? Right? I mean,
I don't know. It certainly goes along with sex being an idol, or conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so like that answer or that regret. And it's a high one, right? Like, I mean, if they're rated 1 to 10 in some kind of order, right? Like that is, it's so crazy to me because this is seriously what has been built around society for a long time. This isn't something new, but just to like test drive. Right? Test. Don't get married too soon and then sleep with whoever you want. Explore, do all these things, follow your heart, blah, 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 blah. And that's sad. Like those last two, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think it has the opposite. It has the opposite effect too, because the whole premise of it is find what you like. And the problem is when you actually find quote unquote what you like, you're going to constantly compare what you like to what you've experienced before. So it has the opposite effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what I was going to say. If you're going to regret anything, regret if you had been with too many people besides your spouse, right? If you had been, because then you do have these comparisons, you have these regrets, you have these thoughts that you wouldn't have. God's goal is to spare us from hardship and strife and these other problems. So, and research shows that if you do shack up, you have you have less commitment and less likely of being successful. Right. So that's just the world's ways just don't work, and secular science, when they do the research, backs it up. If you were to look at the research, it backs it up, but that's not what's pushed. Why? Because
there's a pastor that went kind of off the deep end, but his stance was always like, why would I worry that that's a chocolate cake? I get to eat this vanilla cake. It's better than the cake I wasn't having. And it's like, how do I know? So, I think about like Alicia, like, how do I know or care about how somebody else is in bed? I've never experienced that. And I love my wife and I love what we have, so it's one of those things where you really, I think you do yourself a disservice when you pursue that. And I think, being a guest, I'm not going to speak for the podcast, but like this, I don't think this, if you're looking for an answer to that question, I don't think this is the podcast for you. So,
No, it's not.
no, it's one of those things where like, I really feel like you're having the opposite effect when you pursue that, because you're only hurting yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely. You end up being more empty and more alone than what you think you're achieving. Absolutely. Okay. Great discussion, guys. Thank you. And Chad, we love you being part of the roundtable. Okay, number 4. So we are working up being a workaholic. Yeah. All right. So we've heard that one before. Yeah, absolutely, fire up. But to regretting being a workaholic, which we've heard that. Okay, that one's not that one I don't think throws too many people off. That when on their deathbed said, I wish that I had spent more time in the office.
Yeah. No, this doesn't surprise me that it is one of the top regrets for sure. I do think that there's seasons in life, right? And so I would say, if you're a Christ follower and you have your priority right, God is your priority, and your first ministry is always your family. You never have to have a ministry outside of that. God calls you to the Great Commission, yes, all those things, but you don't have to be a pastor or anything else. Like we talked about that earlier. If you have all those things in order, there are times where you are going to work a lot. You will. But I think that where this one really hits was the priority just to move that corporate ladder, get up that corporate ladder, get as high as I can, and to dismiss everything else in your life. Your parents, your family, your kids, your social life, all those things. Like, and maybe that's where it's coming from. I know personally for me, there's definitely seasons where I work a lot, but even as I'm working, there's a piece of me that's like, I want to be home. And it's that whole balance, I think
there's 2 different outlooks with this one. Is you've got the person where the career is the end all be all. And I think, I don't really think there's a way you temper that, because they've kind of made up their mind of like, I'm going to go as far and as fast and as big as I possibly can. And yeah, they may say they have that regret once all is said and done, but it looks different for them. I think the people that are answering this question, I think they feel trapped, because they feel like, yeah, I wish I hadn't worked as much, but I also felt the need to provide for my family in this way. And I think they feel trapped by societal pressure and by comparing themselves to others about what, and the perceived need of what their children and their wife want.
Yeah. I agree. I'm sitting here singing Toby Mac that I don't want to gain the whole world and lose my soul.
Right.
And I think people realize, they look back and go, and I put the wrong emphasis in the wrong area. And, or like we talked about this, get laid off and all that, where companies can turn around, they can replace you. They might miss you a little, but not for long, So, all right, moving along. Number 3, ignoring your health. So I'm going to assume that these are people at the end of their life who went, if my life could have been longer if I had focused on my health and doing the things that would have kept me healthier.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it's kind of like the whole stewarding what God's given you aspect of it. I mean, I feel that health looks different all over the place. And so if this is truly coming from like, your inner being, right? Like, man, I wish I would have taken care of myself better. I think I see it, right? And I'm feeling it more and more for me personally. I'm like, I need to learn these things so my grandfather passed away last year. Yeah, he passed away last year. And man, 89 years old. And before lockdown, right? Before all that, like this guy always over at the house, always had his spots throughout the city that he would go to, had his friends, but he was always moving. And as he got older, it got harder, because before that he would go to the Y all the time, all these things. As he got older though, but he constantly was moving. And his big thing was like, I don't want to stop moving. I want to keep moving, because once you sit in the chair and stop, like it's over. Down happens. Of course, he's stuck in his house. all those things. Right. And so he got to 89, had a couple like slips with health, but overall he was that guy that strived to have that healthy ish lifestyle, right? So he could live longer. So I've taken that and I've been like, when I'm however old, I want to still be able to move. I want to enjoy my grandkids or even enjoy my great grandkids, right? I want to do this. I don't know how it looks. I'm not going to compare myself with some dude on TV or magazine or whatever. That's not what I care about. I just care about like, am I healthy enough? One, to do what God's calling me to do, really. And that's been a mind shift for me it's been a little bit, but that was a shift in my mental way that I thought about health. But one is that, two, for my family, and three, to live longer. Instead of aesthetics and how does this guy look, like that was the shift of, hey, I need to do this in order for all these things to fall in place. So I could see that as being a regret. And if you're listening and you need to turn it around today, like plant the tree now, right?
Plant the tree today, right? There's no better time. There's no better time. But well, I mean, unless you're on your deathbed, in which case then we're sorry, and hopefully you know Jesus, and which is still not too late. But yeah, I mean, the body it is a stewardship, so we got to make sure that we're taking care of it in the best ways that we can, not making it an idol, right? Just are we making the right choices or the better choices for that? Mm-hmm. Are we not giving into gluttony? Are we not giving into losing self-control? So there's just these are things that some people have more struggles than others, right? And so that's certainly something to be aware of. All right, let's jump into number 2, and that was actually something that Brad, you brought up earlier, and I was thinking the cat's in the cradle. Number 2 is not spending enough time with dad.
Mm. Yeah, no, I for sure. I mean, I have a good.
That's one of those. Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the thing too. Is like, yeah, I think everybody's gonna have their regret. I don't think no matter how much time you spend with your father, like you're gonna have that regret. You're gonna wish you could have had one more day, one more afternoon, one more whatever. So I think that one's just part of grief. That's the way that's gonna go, regardless of how you feel. You could have a really bad relationship with your dad, and you're gonna wish you had time with your father. You could have a tremendous relationship with your father, and you're going to wish you could have had one more day with him.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. It's the same aspect of like, you can't, it's always going to be there because I can't live every day like it's my last day. Right. If I knew this was my last day on earth, I probably wouldn't be recording this podcast. Right. I can't, like there'd be a lot of other things I'd be doing.
It won't get edited. You won't be there to listen to it. Yeah.
No, exactly. So, but there's a lot of things that you'd want to do, right? It's this is my last day on earth. And then there's those people like, well, YOLO, you got to do everything. It's like, you can't even live life like that. And so I agree 100% with what Chad's saying. Like, even like take it to with my grandfather. Like, I wish I would have spent more time with him, and we spent a ton of time with him. But it's one of those processes of like, man, if only I could have spent another day with him. If only I could have done this. If only I could have done that. When in actuality, if you are in a healthy relationship with your parents, with your dad, it's always going to be there. There's never enough, right? Because there's also life, and I love that answer, Chad. That was perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. And the only other thing I would feel to add to that is if you're a dad, then take that to heart and see, okay, if that's the number 2 thing that people are coming up and saying, didn't spend enough time with my dad, then make sure you're offering and that you're available to your sons.
Yeah. Well, and your opportunity's there, because if you have a terrible relationship with your father, great. You get to be the catalyst to change it for your child. If you have a tremendous relationship with your father, great. You have the blueprint of how you need to be with your child.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's good.
Absolutely. All right. And then number 1, not going after the hot girl.
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
I
don't
did
understand.
too.
I don't understand this regret. Like what?
Not sure why they didn't get. Yeah. No, that actually not only because it's my daughter, but also I love the answer just in principle.
Yes.
That's a fantastic answer. Brad, you're going to say something?
No, it's perfect. It just, and the whole thing, like, what was it? Number 5, number 6, married too soon, didn't sleep with enough people. And now the number one regret that men have is they didn't chase after the hot girl or whatever. Like, gosh, that mentality is ridiculous. Hey, Lisa got me, caught my eye, and that was it. She's the most beautiful woman there is. That's it. So I get what they're saying, but at the same time, it's like, how horrible a life to live. If you're like, if you're married and you're looking over at your wife and you're like, man, you know what? I really regret that I didn't ask that hot chick out at college. Like, what is that? Like, what kind of horrible life? Yes.
If you're going to regret something, regret that that's your mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
That should be number one.
Do we know the demographic of this survey? Because, and again, I'm not trying to pigeonhole anybody or offend anyone, but I would say there's probably a lot of submissive individuals if that's your number one answer.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people that don't have a lot of, shall we say, gumption or testicular fortitude.
Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, we offend weekly, so it's okay.
That's one of my spiritual gifts. So I just try to make sure I'm exercising it appropriately.
I like that. I offend so many people. No,
I think. Go ahead.
Oh no, the demographic thing, that's perfect. Yeah, I'm wondering too. But how bad a life are you living? My goodness.
Yeah, the only thing I know is it's just unbelieving men. I mean, right? So it would be interesting to find out more about that and see the guys' answer. But I think I think it's safe to say that the answer should be regret that you're thinking that way, because the person you're with, your spouse, needs to be the most beautiful. It needs to be the hot girl. That's the one that your mindset should be set on, that I married at the right time, and thank God that I did. And how I got saved or protected from other things that happened in my life, because it happened the way that God wanted it to. And it happened the way that, because of that, I get all these blessings and I get to be with this hot girl the rest of my life, or as long as God allows for us to have breath. Right. And that's where it's like, it is hard. Yeah. I'm not trying to hold people who aren't in the body, who aren't believers in Christ. Right. I'm not trying to hold them to the same standards, because we go through different rule books. We should have different mindsets, and we should have different standards of what we regret and what we don't regret. But we all shouldn't regret the same things. It shouldn't be part of that same list, because what godly men don't want to regret is not becoming the man that God made them to be, right? Is going after the approval of man instead of God, of not taking risk because of fear of failure, especially if God called us to do something, but then we held back, right? So you should regret if you're not taking those risks because of fear of failure. And if it's not too late, then go do it, and ask if it is too late, then ask for forgiveness. And godly men don't want to regret not investing in relationships instead of task or their hobbies, work, sports, whatever it is, right? We are relational beings. We're created for relationship, and with God first and with others after that. We're supposed to love others as Christ loved them, right? So that's and glorify God. That's it. Right? That's kind of it in a nutshell. So these other things we talked about, right? This list of things, these are what the world chases after. This is what the world's saying that they want, and if they didn't get it, they regret it. It shouldn't be our list. And if it's your list, guys, then you might be living more of an average life than you are wanting to, or believe that you are, right? So think more about the other things, because here, let me bring us home. So guys, look, average men regret not living their life for personal gain. Above average men do the opposite. Above average men strive to not regret living a life that doesn't give God all the glory. So want to thank Chad again for coming along, being part of the roundtable, and joining with us in contributing to that. So definitely thank you, Chad. For the rest of you, please make sure that you're subscribing, following, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a review, and go out there and become who God made you to be, a better than an average man. We'll see you next time.